Good morning. This morning, we're going to talk about the Torah portion. It's a very important Torah portion, Yisro, Jethro, because it is the story of Matan Torah. The Jewish people have arrived at Sinai, at the mountain, Mount Sinai, and they're going to be receiving the Torah from Almighty God. But also this Monday, the 22nd day of Shvat, is the yard site of the Rebbetzin. Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka Schneerson, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I brought a picture. The daughter of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the granddaughter of the Rebbe before that, the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber. She can trace her lineage all the way back to the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. Now, the Rebbetzin, married to the Rebbe, was a very private person. She didn't go to 770 to the Rebbe Shul to daven with everyone else. She davened upstairs. She didn't go to the conventions or the lectures or the Farbrengens because she chose to be very personal and very private. Good morning, Lauren. And did not want people to fuss over her. She is what you call kol kvuda bas melech penima, that the dignity of a real and true royalty comes from within. So with your permission, I want to share a little bit about the Rebbetzin because I feel that she is a person, as the Rebbe said, "V'hachayi yitein elibai." When the Rebbe spoke about the Rebbetzin after she passed, he said, "And the living shall take to heart." Hachaya took her name from a passage from Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and he used it to show and tell everybody that we, the living, should take to heart and look at the life and the teachings of the Rebbetzin as a role model, and in this way, by emulating her life, being like her, we keep the Rebbetzin legacy alive. There's a continuum of everything she represented and did in this world. So I want to share a few stories about the Rebbetzin I think that really resonate with me. I hope they'll resonate with you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
So when Queen Elizabeth died a few, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, her bodyguard, Richard Griffin, he was her bodyguard for over 16 years. He never left her side.
Hmm.
He told the following story. They were in Balmoral Castle, which is like a suburb of London, and the Queen goes there for a little relaxation. And every day he'd take her on a walk in the woods. It's beautiful there. And they meet an American tourist, a young man, and he sees the Queen and Richard, the bodyguard, walking. He doesn't know who they are. He says, "Hi, are you from around here?" And the Queen says, "Yes, I am." I heard that the Queen lives nearby. So Richard said, "Yes, she lives in Balmoral Castle at times." So he said, "Did you ever meet her?" So Richard said, "Many times, many times." He says, "Wow, what is she like?" And he said, "Well, she can be very grumpy and cantankerous, but she also has a great sense of humor." So he says, "Wow, can I take a picture with you, Richard?" He didn't know it was Richard. He said, "Can I take a picture with you?" Someone who knows the Queen? He said, "Of course." He hands his camera to the Queen. He says, "Ma'am, would you mind taking the picture?" And she takes the picture and she's smiling. And then he doesn't want her to feel bad. So he says, "Ma'am, can I take a picture with you too?" And she said, "Of course." And he takes the picture and he heads off. And the Queen looks at Richard and she said, "Richard, I can't wait till he develops his pictures and he finds out who he met." So when we talk about the Rebbetzin, I have to say that she is a true queen. And the minute you met her or saw her, because she had many visitors who came to her house on President Street, You knew that there was royalty. You knew that she had a special energy, a special soul. She was a Rebbetzin, the wife of the Rebbe. And very interestingly, that every anniversary, the women of the community, the Neshei Chabad, would send the Rebbe and Rebbetzin a gift for their anniversary. Once it was a cake in the shape of the walls of Jerusalem. And one year it was a gorgeous bouquet of flowers. And they listed names of people who needed a blessing. And they wrote in the note, Mazel Tov anniversary. These people need a blessing. Can you pass it on to the Rebbe? She took the note and she sent it over to the Rebbe's office in 770 in the synagogue. And the Rebbe looked at the note and he smiled and he said, you know, the Rebbetzin can also give blessings. In other words, the Rebbe said that the Rebbetzin herself is somebody that also could give blessings. You know, when she passed away, a person came to pay a shiva call to the Rebbe. And he says to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was sitting shiva in their house on President Street, and he says to the Rebbe, I heard that the Rebbetzin was an outstanding woman. And the Rebbe looked at him and said, that is an understatement. That is an understatement. And the Rebbe said, she was my panimi, she was my essence. So we understand that the Rebbetzin wasn't just a wife. She was the Rebbe's everything, everything to the Rebbe. When she married the Rebbe, they were in Russia. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, her father had already made his way, escape to the United States, and there was a correspondence. And the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe writes to his son-in-law, he says, I hope that you are contemplating the magnificent pearl that you have, which is the Rebbetzin, the magnificent pearl that you have, he said about the Rebbetzin. And when people came into their home to visit the Rebbetzin, again, very privately, she would invite certain people. People had a relationship with her. They saw periodicals and newspapers in Russian, in French, in Germany, in German, in English, in Hebrew. The Rebbetzin was the Rebbe's Google. She read all these newspapers and shared information about the world and what's happening with the Rebbe. So the Rebbe should have that information. So more and more you see the Rebbetzin, who she truly was. You know that 3 times a week, the Rebbe would have private audiences in his office. People would make appointments. And for 30 years, the Rebbe had people come out and in of his office at night till 3, 4 in the morning. And the Rebbetzin would wait up every night for the Rebbe, no matter when, even if the sun was rising. She did not want the Rebbe to come home to a quiet, dark house. She always wanted the Rebbe to have hot food ready, talking about marriage, talking about relationships. So the Rebbetzin, she had wisdom, she had kindness, she had compassion, and she was a special holy person, very special person. You know, there was an electrician who was doing work in the house, and he comes over to the Rebbetzin, he says, are you Chabad? She said, yes, I am. He says, interesting. He says, you know, whenever I do electrical work in a house of a Chabad family, I always see a picture of the Rebbe on the wall. I didn't notice any picture of the Rebbe in this house. He didn't realize he was in the Rebbe's house. And she didn't say anything. She just smiled because she never called herself Rebbetzin. She said, this is Mrs. Schneerson from President Street. That's how she referred to herself. Because again, she did not want the fuss. She didn't want people pointing her out. She didn't want the celebrity status. And another beautiful story about the Rebbetzin is that she always drove herself. She worked in the big library in New York City, in the reference library division. But years later, she retired. She stopped driving. So her house manager, who oversaw all the house affairs for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, his name was Chesed Halberstam. He's actually a cousin of ours. He drove her around, and every day they would take a drive, the Rebbetzin, to get out, fresh air. And one day, they always took the same route. One day there was a detour. They were doing construction, so they took a different route. And car like stopped by the light, and she sees by a house, like an apartment building, it looks like a family is being evicted. Their furniture, boxes, suitcases strewn on the front sidewalk. So she says to Chesed, stop the car, go over and see what's going on over here. And there was a big truck that said Marshall. So Chesed comes back. He says, Rebbetzin, this family is being evicted. They didn't pay rent. She says, go find out how much they owe and if they'll take a check. He comes back. He says, yes, the marshal, this is how much they owe. The marshal will take a check. And he said, if you pay him right now, he'll even put everything back into the apartment. So she took out her checkbook. She wrote out a check. She gave it to Chesed. And she said, and let's pull away before the family realizes what I did. She did not want credit for her kindness and her compassion. This who the Rebbetzin was. And before I go into the Torah portion, I want to share something else. That I have two first cousins. And my grandfather, who was the Rebbe's Gabbai in the shul, was very, very close to the Rebbetzin. And he spoke to her not once a day, many times, a few times a day. And she needed something. So he called up my first cousin, Bracha Richler, her name is, to go deliver a package to the Rebbetzin. She was very shy, so she said to her younger sister, come with me. So they go together, and they go to the back door, because when you delivered, you went to the back door. The Rebbetzin opened up, and she said, how are you? She took the package. She schmoozed with them a little bit. She was very, very friendly. And they told her they're Yankel Lipsker's grandchildren, and she asked them how school is. She always showed an interest in people. And then as they're leaving, she said something so spectacular that in our family, this has become a slogan. She says to my first cousins, enjoy life. And each one of them has a plaque in their kitchen that says enjoy life, because this is what the Rebbetzin told them. And you have to think about this. Of all things, a Rebbetzin told two young teenagers, enjoy life. And I'll share one more story in conclusion, and this will tie in what that means. That the Rebbetzin was once asked, what was your best moment of your life, Rebbetzin? And she said, this moment, this very moment. In other words, we're always chasing, if only I was rich, I would have that. After this happens, I'll be happy. I get this, then I know I can relax. We're always chasing the rainbow. But if we could look at every moment of our life and appreciate it, what's my best moment right now? Where I am, where I'm standing, this is where I'm meant to be. This is my best life. This is my best moment. And that really is the secret of happiness, if you think about it. Because if you can look at every moment that this is your best moment. Yes, life could get better. There's more over the horizon, hopefully. But if you look at every moment that this is your best moment, and that you have to fill every moment with your best of everything, then your life takes on a new dimension. You're not looking what's tomorrow, what's going to be next year. You're looking now, that this moment has to be my best moment. I have to do the best I can in this very moment. There's so many stories to share about the Rebbetzin. So many beautiful, beautiful stories about her life, her wisdom, the way she spoke. She just had such a brilliant way of speaking in every part of her life. And people spoke to her. They saw her intelligence, her brilliance, and her unbelievable kindness and compassion. She was able to relate to anyone. So many people visited her in the house and spoke to her. And how did she make people feel relaxed? She would ask them questions. What are you doing? Where do you go to school? Where do you live? Where did you grow up? And she disarmed people And then when they were comfortable, they got into good conversation. But she knew a way to make people feel content, happy, and comfortable when they visited her for whatever reason. Like I had two cousins that had just finally were able to leave Russia and go to Israel, and they came to America. And my mother and father were very, very close to the Rebbe. They called my father the Rebbe's CIA man. He was a journalist. Gershon Jacobson of blessed memory arranged for the two Russian cousins to visit with the Rebbetzin. And her whole demeanor to them, she spoke to them in perfect Russian about their life and how what they're doing in Israel and how did they get out. And the Rebbe didn't just have conversations. Every conversation was subtly also an education. She asked you about your life, but she also was able to educate you and steer the conversation in a way that's productive. That's productive. Not just chit chat, silly, and wondering, what is the Rebbetzin getting at? She's just asking me about my job. Because once she heard about your job, she was able to insert comments that gave you a new way of looking at yourself and looking at your life and looking at what you're doing. So this is who Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka was. I hope that you got a little feeling of what it meant to know a queen, a woman, a true queen, of royalty. Many times I'm married to my husband who's a rabbi, and people call me Rebbetzin. And I always say, don't call me Rebbetzin. And they go, why? And I'm like, because I met a real Rebbetzin. So I never feel I could be a Rebbetzin. This is a Rebbetzin. Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, she's a Rebbetzin. So to me, a Rebbetzin is a very exalted title. It's a very revered title. And you're born into that title. So I never can look in the mirror and say, oh, I see a Rebbetzin there. I want to be like her, but I'm not her. I know that. So to know the Rebbetzin again was to know Jewish royalty, true through and through. People sometimes would go to the house to, let's say, deliver. They didn't know it was the Rebbetzin, but they felt something. They felt there was a certain dignity there that comes from within. Royalty comes from within. So Monday is the Rebbetzin yahrzeit. So what do we do on Monday? We give extra tzedakah. We say an extra prayer. We do an extra mitzvah, an act of goodness. We go to her resting place in Queens, which is near the Rebbe. We pray there. And this gives the soul a lift and uplifts. And it brings a lot of joy and nachas to that soul when we remember that soul, that special purpose. So enjoy life, the Rebbetzin says, and remember every moment is your best moment. Think of that. So this is who Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka was. Does anybody want to add anything, say anything, comment?
Yes, how does a person get to be or begin to be so excellent? Was she brought up this way? Was it just God given? Really, she was an extraordinary being, and you don't find so many extraordinary beings such as her.
Well, first of all, like I mentioned, look where she was born into royalty.
Yeah.
She was born as the daughter of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. Her grandfather was the Rebbe before that, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber,
All right.
and going all the way back to the Alter Rebbe. And then she married the Rebbe, although he wasn't Rebbe when she married him. He was a disciple of her father.
Right.
The Rebbe always called his father-in-law the Rebbe, the Shre, my father-in-law the Rebbe, because the Rebbe, her father, was his Rebbe. So it's, of course, what they say. People always ask me after the Rebbe passed on, who's the next Rebbe? How come there is no successor? How come the Rebbe didn't appoint another Rebbe? So unlike other Hasidic dynasties, it's not an inherited position. It's an earned position.
Okay, yes.
You're either born a Rebbe or you're not born a Rebbe. Either born a Rebbetzin or you're not born a Rebbetzin. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yes.
So
And did
that's
she
who the
have
Rebbetzin
siblings?
was. As a matter of fact, I want to share this. It's just a very beautiful thing. So when her father passed away in the 1950, her father passed away, 10th day of Shvat, 1950. the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, passes away in New York. And it's very obvious that her husband, the Rebbe, would be the next Rebbe because even though he had an older brother-in-law, the older brother-in-law was a genius, a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, but not a Rebbe. Everyone knew the son-in-law is the Rebbe. The Rebbe didn't want to be Rebbe. He refused. People said, "You're the..." No. The Rebbe was like his wife, introverted, did not want the limelight, didn't want the honor, did not want to be a celebrity Rebbe. The Rebbe wanted stay quiet, live a quiet, pious life. So the Rebbetzin says to her husband, the Rebbe, knowing full well that when you're married to a Rebbe, you give up your life. The
Okay.
Rebbe now belongs to the world, like
Hmm.
Moses. She says to her husband, the Rebbe, she always called him my husband. She says, if you do not assume the leadership and become the next Rebbe, all my father's work will be, I don't know, lost, but there'll be no continuity. Who will continue my father's work for the people, the Jews of Israel, of the world, for world Jewry? And that was the time when the Holocaust just ended and everyone, the Jewish nation was demoralized, broken, shattered. If they had no leadership, what would happen to us?
Okay.
So the Rebbe heard his wife and listened to her and became Rebbe.
Could you
All
show us a
because of the
picture?
Rebbetzin. He wouldn't have become Rebbe. He would have said, no, it's okay. Someone else could do with the job, even though no one else could really do the job.
Could you
So this is
show
who
us
the
a picture
Rebbetzin was.
of her again?
This is who the Rebbetzin was. Shelley, I hope that answers a question in a small way.
Yes, yes, thank you. It's just amazing how people get to be so, yes, born to royalty, yes, but the whole lineage was that way. It's just so phenomenal to know such amazing people,
And
of
again, the
this world.
Rebbetzin, when I was growing up in Crown Heights, we saw the Rebbe a lot. And like I told you, my father was very close to the Rebbe. But the Rebbetzin only on occasions, like my grandparents were very close to the Rebbetzin as well. And they would send Purim Shalach Manis to the Rebbe and Rebbetzin. Only a select few would send to the Rebbe and Rebbetzin Purim Shalach Manis.
Oh,
People were very close. So I would be the delivery girl in
oh,
elementary school. And I would go to the back door, ring the bell, and my grandparents had me rehearse what to say. Dasi Shalach Manis from the Rebbe to the Rebbe and Rebbetzin from Baba and Zayda Lipsker. This is Purim Shalach Manis to
oh,
the Rebbe and Rebbetzin from Grandma and Grandpa Lipsker. And they would rehearse me over and over because I was like 8, 9 years old.
yeah, yes. Oh, wow.
I'll tell
Thank
you one more little story, then we'll go to the Torah portion. Does anybody want to add anything, say anything,
you.
Can you show a
complain?
picture of her again?
Yes. Oh, let me share one more beautiful story. Let me share the story. So my father, as many of you know, he was the editor and publisher in his later years of his own newspaper called the Allgemeine Journal. It was a Yiddish newspaper. And when the Rebbetzin passed away, people didn't have pictures of the Rebbetzin. My father right away found some magnificent pictures of the Rebbetzin and wrote on the front page, there were many articles about the greatness of the Rebbetzin, who she was. Now, the Rebbe was sitting Shiva in his house. And after Shiva, the Rebbe also had a study upstairs in his house on President Street. And he stayed in his house the entire year, except when he went to shul um, sometime. But the Rebbe basically prayed in the house and everything. So the Rebbe called my father, gave my father $470 cash, which is the numerical value of the Rebbetzins name Chaya Mushka, and thanked my father. He said, this is in thanks for the beautiful, magnificent tribute to the Rebbetzin in the newspaper. And I want you to know something very interesting. This is behind the scenes, I'll share with you. My father was a very brilliant, intelligent person, and he understood the Rebbe's mindset very well. And people didn't publish pictures of the Rebbetzin. They didn't have pictures of the Rebbetzin. So my father, when he went to shul on Shabbos, people yelled at him, who gave you permission to publish pictures of the Rebbetzin? But the Rebbe thanked my father. He said, when you put the pictures in of the Rebbetzin, you highlighted who she was. You know, a picture is worth a million words. When people saw the holy face of the Rebbetzin and read about the Rebbetzin and heard about the Rebbetzin, and we're talking about Jews who are not religious Jews, Jews who just like to read Yiddish. My father had a huge following. They got to see who the Rebbetzin was. So by my father putting in pictures, it was not only respectful, it was necessary. But not everyone had that broad-minded idea of what is needed at times. My father very much understood what the Rebbe wanted and how to proceed in many, many areas of Jewish life, connections with politicians. And another time I'll share stories of how my father did a tremendous amount of work in the world on behalf of the Rebbe, very positive, good stuff. Like CIA, but that's who the Rebbetzin was. That's who the Rebbetzin was. And this is one of the pictures that now, you could buy them. That they show the Rebbetzin as a very dignified, special person. You look at the picture, you could see it already. So does anybody want to say anything or add anything?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's now segue into the Torah portion. So as I mentioned, this Torah portion takes us from the story of the Exodus from Egypt. 7 weeks later, the 50th day, they're standing at Mount Sinai, ready to receive the Torah. So how did it work? God's voice was heard from the top of the mountain and reciting the 10 Commandments, which is the kind of the cliff notes of the entire oral and written tradition of the Torah. So God said the 10 Commandments. Moses, of course, represented the Jewish nation and taught the 10 Commandments and the mitzvahs after the giving of the tablets. And you know the joke, why 2 tablets? 5 of the commandments are written on one square, 5 on the other. Because when God asked the Jewish nation, you want the Torah? And they said, how much does it cost? God said, it's free. They said, we'll take 2. That's the joke. Why there's 2 tablets. But the reason there's 2 tablets is because one side of the 10 Commandments deals with mitzvahs between God and man, and the other side deal with mitzvahs between man and man. For example, do not kill, do not steal are mitzvahs that deal between man and man, ben adam l'chavero. And do not serve idolatry, do not curse in God's name in vain, that deals with our relationship with God. And as a matter of fact, the 10 Commandments are also the 10 Commandments of marriage. You want to have a good marriage, a good relationship, each one of these commandments has a lesson in life's relationship. But I'm not going to go into that right now. I want to share a different interesting insight. If we have time, we'll go back to it. So what are the first words that God speaks to his nation? Anybody know? Anoichi, Anoichi Hashem Elekecha, I am God, your God, who took you out of, where did God take us out of? Egypt. Right? The Jews just left Egypt. In this one opening passage, there's so many questions. What language is the word Anoichi? Anybody know? It's Egyptian. It's not Hebrew. If God wants to say Hebrew, Ani, not Anoichi, I am God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. Why Anoichi? It's Egyptian. God, we know, spoke, the Torah is written in Lashon HaKodesh, Hebrew, the holy tongue. So shouldn't God be conveying the 10 Commandments in Hebrew? At least the opening word is Egyptian. The rest is in Hebrew. But why the opening word is Anoichi? Question number 1. Question number 2, let me ask you, if you want to show your greatness, you want to show your God, You say, I took you out of Egypt. That was great. There were miracles and it was a magnificent feat. But shouldn't God take something that's even more miraculous and great? Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. I am God, your God, that created heaven and earth. I created the world. That encompasses everything. Why does God say, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt? Take a bigger approach, a more broader approach. If you created artificial intelligence, don't minimize it and say, I created the ability for you to ask a question and get an answer. Say, no, I created the whole artificial intelligence. Right? Now it says, I am God, your God that took you out of Egypt. But isn't the Torah eternal? My generation, your generation, we weren't there. It's nice that there's a wonderful memory back in the day, but it's not personal in a sense. We weren't there. So how does the concept that the Torah is eternal, its message is eternal, mesh with God telling them, guess what? I took you out of Egypt. Isn't it great? I am God, your God. I took you out of Egypt. Does everybody understand the questions? Does anybody have any answers? Does anybody want to guess or share? Don't be shy. You know what I always say? The only answer that's wrong is the one that's not said. So let's start with Anoichi. Anoichi is, yes, it's Egyptian. It's Egyptian. But when you're standing in front of a people who's shivering in their boots, they're petrified, they're hearing God's voice, that is not a simple thing to hear. It's scary. As a matter of fact, it says that the souls of the Jews started to go out. They were fainting. To hear God's voice is like something out of this world. So how does God, like we said with the Rebbetzin, make you comfortable, make you receptive to hearing the 10 Commandments? You have to keep everybody calm, relaxed. This was supposed to be a human experience, not an extraterrestrial experience. Otherwise, God would have flown us to Mars. So God starts by using language that clicks with them. Anoichi. I. In their language, the language that they spoke in Egypt, even though they spoke Hebrew in Egypt, Lashon HaKodesh, it says they kept their language, but the language of the country was Egyptian. So God endears himself, in a sense, to relate. The same thing when you call a student into your office, you want to tell them something. You don't begin by, screaming at them. You endear, you talk to them calmly. Then you bring up the issues at hand. So by using Anoichi, it brought the Jewish nation into a level of receptiveness, in a sense. They're able to hear God's voice. They're receptive to God's voice. So that's why God spoke to them with opening word in Egyptian and also makes it more personal to you. Now, why does God say, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt? Then, sure, it's very personal, but that's the reason. God is saying to the nation, I have a relationship with you. I took you out of Egypt. God could have said, I'm the God who created heaven and earth. But God, again, wants to be approachable. You say to a child, I helped your great-great-great-grandfather escape from Poland. Very nice. The kid is looking, I don't even know where Poland is. But if you say to somebody something that just happened, you're relatable. Remember me? I just got you out of Egypt. True, you could make it grandiose, but you know what? They weren't there by Adam and Chava were created. This is relevant to those people now. But now the plot thickens a little bit. How do you then explain that the Torah is eternal? Again, my generation wasn't in Egypt. We weren't slaves in Egypt. We don't speak Egyptian. So if the Torah is eternal, maybe the heaven and earth approach should really be the approach. But the answer is here, like we discuss always based on Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, that when God says, I am the one that took you out of Egypt, it's not only a physical exodus. God stuck them on horses and wagons, and then through miracles, they were able to leave Egypt. It was also a spiritual redemption. Internally, they had to leave Egypt. Until this very day, it says that every day of our lives, we have to look at ourselves as if we just left Egypt. What does that mean? That you should all walk around saying, I was a slave and now I'm free. Who wants to look at themselves as a slave, as a victim of the Holocaust, of slavery? We want to look at ourselves as emancipated, free, happy. But it means that constantly in our lives, God is the one that helps us overcome things that enslave us, trauma, emotional problems, pain, suffering, challenges. By God saying, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt, it doesn't only mean physically took you on a boat and drove you out of Egypt. It means every day of our lives when we encounter Egyptian slavery mentally, God takes us out. God is the one that schleps us out. And we can tap into that energy of knowing that there's a God who runs the world and everything that happens to us is for a purpose, a reason, challenges, and so on. So when God said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, that took you out of Egypt, I'm taking you out every day of your life. I didn't stop then. I'm with you all the time. And one more beautiful point I want to bring to this topic is that when God says, I took you out of Egypt, God is looking at the Jewish people and saying, I saw you in the worst times. I know who you are, but I'm still your God no matter what. Even when you fall, even when you deny me and say, I don't believe in a God. God doesn't exist. What do I need Torah and mitzvahs for? I'm living in America. We have our own rules and regulations. I don't need another peckle of rules and regulations. God says, I took you out of Egypt. I saw you in your worst moments. So don't worry. I know you're a human being. I gave you the Torah. I gave the Torah to human beings. So if you're embarrassed or shamed at times in your life because you say, I don't want God to see me like this. Now's not the time for a relationship with God, like I'm at my worst. God says, I've seen you at your worst. I'm the one who took you out of the worst. You don't have to worry about that. I'm giving Torah to a human being because I know you're going to fall. I know you'll at times deny me. I know at times you won't be on your best behavior. But know that I am Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm always your God. Even at times in your life when you'll deny your Jewishness even, or not know you're Jewish. Some people said, I never knew I was Jewish. My parents never told me I was Jewish. They didn't want me to identify with the persecuted people. So in this opening statement encompasses our whole relationship with God and our relationship with the Torah. The Torah is not for perfect people. The Torah is for us, the imperfect people, rather me, the imperfect. I don't want to say anybody's here imperfect. This is precisely who God gave the Torah. God would have wanted angels. He would have given the Torah to the angels. As a matter of fact, the angels complained to God. Why do you want to give the Torah to those people? You know that they are not always going to follow it. You know they're going to deny you. You know they're going to be disrespectful. Why are you giving it to give it to us? We will never fail because we're angels. And God laughed and said, no, but I'm precisely giving it to humankind for this reason. It's an imperfect people that I want the Torah for. If I wanted perfection, I wouldn't have made people with free choice. I would have made them into robots. So the story here is the story that Torah is for imperfect people, for you and for me. That's who the Torah is for. Does anybody want to say anything or add anything or ask any questions?
Good. Amazing.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said it's an amazing presentation. It's really wonderful.
So now let's go back into the 10 Commandments, see what they are, and okay. Sorry, let me just, somebody asked a question. Let's answer that question. Let's see. Oh, here, let's see the question. Oh, oh, can you ask that, whoever asked that question, can you, oh, here it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, let me just see this. Sorry. Let's look at it. I'm junking. A chance you could offer your definition of who God is to you, spirit of humanity. Okay, fine. So you want to know who is God to every individual? Am I asking this question correctly? I don't mind if you would write me again in the chat. Yes. Okay. That's a very, very, very good question. So, give me a second to organize my thoughts. So the question is, to reiterate for everybody, who is God to you? What is God to you as an individual? Very good question. Very good question. Let me share another thing. I didn't know if I was going to share it today, but I want to share it today because I think this is going to really tap into that question in a deep way, though. I hope it's okay. In a deep way. I'm going off on a tangent before I get to your answer. The question again is, what is God to me? Okay. So first of all, a very interesting line from Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism that every person has a part of God in them, which explains what we discussed many times over the course of the years of lessons and classes and discussions and conversation, is that if we didn't have a part of God within us and we weren't created in God's image, it's very hard to get to where you want to have to be and have a relationship with God because you're so disconnected. The fact that God took a piece of God and put it into every one of us allows us to have that special one-on-one relationship with God. Because they say, where will I find God? In Shul? No, you find God within you. You don't have to look for God in India, in Burma, in exotic places. God is where you are if you allow God in. And not if you allow God and reveal godliness within, because your soul is part of God. So I always say the example with Freud, that he described it as the inner child. I describe it as the soul. That if a person has a life that is so traumatized, burdened, full of pain, challenges, and struggles, the whole key of the therapy is to uncover layer after layer like an onion until you can find the pure part of yourself that is untouched by all the layers of pain and suffering and challenges and trials and tribulations. If you can get back to that point in your life when you were just born, the inner child, untouched by what happened after, that's how you begin to heal. So if a person has trials and tribulations or disconnect from their purpose in life, you have to find a way to connect to your inner godliness, to your soul, to your neshama, and get back to that pure part of yourself that can never be touched no matter what you did. So let's say a person that your whole life you denied God. You said there's no God. I believe in the Big Bang or another theory. And you never did anything to connect to God. You did whatever you wanted. You were in the mood of eating something non-kosher, you ate non-kosher. You never acknowledge that there's any spiritual connection to God. But then, for whatever reason, sometimes as people go through pain and there's nothing left, they begin seeking God. They realize you could always get back to that pure point in your life because it's there in you. You don't have to go anywhere else to get it. It's in you. Who's God? Is it so the whole of humanity and the parts within us? When we refer to him, what would you say the origin is? Okay, so God is not something that you could call as a entity. God is everything. Ein od milvadai, Kabbalah says. There is nothing but God. What does this mean? That when God created the world from nothingness. There was nothing. Only God is able to take nothing and make something. And Chassidus, Jewish Muslim, explains that let's say God decided, I need a vacation. I don't want to create anymore. And God were to step away, and I'm using this as a metaphorical example, everything would resort back to nothingness. Why? It's not like you bake a cake with sugar, flour, water, eggs, salt, etc., and you bake the cake from objects, from ingredients, and you leave the cake at the table, and you tell your family, don't touch the cake till I get back, the cake remains. But if the cake came from nothingness, and you leave, the cake will fall back to nothingness. So God is what we call I don't know what to even use the word, that created the whole world, designed mankind, designed nature. Even logic is a creation made by God. As I explained 1 week, why is 1 plus 1 2? God created logic that it should be logical. Otherwise, it's illogical. Why is something logical and something illogical? Because God made it that way. Otherwise, it's not logic. And I was explaining that what does it mean to have faith in God? Faith in God is not based on logic. It's a very important point to make. Faith in God has to be based on an understanding that you can't understand because you're finite and God is infinite. So when you see something illogical, terrible, horrible, like October 7th, can you wrap your brain around it? If you can wrap your brain around it, I want to be your best friend. Mm-hmm. How could God allow this to happen? Or make it happen even? Because we understand that we can't understand. That's a key here. It doesn't mean we shouldn't cry, scream, yell at God and say, why did you let this happen? How dare you let this happen? That's our job to do. But at the end of the day, we don't walk away from God because we don't understand, because now we know we can never understand the infinite. That's where faith steps in. When all else fails, you have faith in God. Say, God, I don't know why you did this terrible thing. I don't know why you allowed this to happen. But I understand that I can't understand. That's a very important thing. And I'll tell you also why it's very comforting. And I wanted to also say that everything I'm sharing is not my own opinion. This is all from the books of Torah, Kabbalah, Hasidus, based on Torah. It's not my opinion. That it's very comforting. I'll tell you why. Because if you think you control the world, and if you feel that everything is run by man, there is no God running the universe. Okay? Hi, Lauren. And you feel that everything just happens haphazardly because, oh, you know why this happened? I took the wrong turn. Don't you think God made you take the wrong turn? And you feel you run the world? It's a very big burden to feel that mankind runs the world and there's no God. It's very hard to live with because we are so limited. But knowing that the infinite runs the world, God, whatever name you want to give God, some people don't like the word God. It's very comforting to know things happen because God wants it to happen. And sometimes, no matter what you do and how you do it, it's going to happen a different way because God wanted it to happen that way. Then you can wake up in the morning and say, thank you, God, for giving me my life, and put yourself in God's hands, so to speak. But if you feel that you can never take a rest because the whole world is on your head and everything you do will suffer the consequences for the entire universe, it's very difficult to live with. So by having faith and belief in a creator, you're basically saying that there is a divine plan. I have to do everything I can do in my life. I have to try to be the best person I can be, given my tools and my personality. But at the end of the day, I put myself in God's hands. Listen, God, I can't do it all. I'm a human being, for heaven's sake. That's the beauty of having faith and a relationship with God. And notice when God says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. It's personal. God should have said, I am God, the God, the God. I am your God. Why didn't God say, I'm the God? That shows you the difference between God and someone like Paro who thought he was a God. A God that oppresses, or a God that says, I'm your God. Through thick or thin, I'm there for you. Just let me in. That's the difference. So I hope in some way I answered your question. Yes, and it requires more discussion. It's a complicated question. So we have a few minutes left to discuss what I wanted to share. Another very interesting that ties in, and we'll do the Ten Commandments another time.
Thank you for that answer. That was a great answer. Thank you, Freida.
Okay, so we're going to have another 10 minutes. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Hello. Yes, I had a flight canceled. They told me I was going to be refunded, and I was never refunded my credit card. Yeah. LU5QWD. Yes. Read that. I asked for a refund online, but I never got it back. My credit card. Okay, could I hang up or I should hold? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so I just want to end off with a very small point tying into the the giving of the Torah. So a very beautiful thing, like we discussed, is that I am God, your God. I am making it personal. I'm giving you the Torah. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that in the Torah there's a law that, let's say there's a judgment, there's a court case, and it's a court case about an event that happened many, many years ago. So there's two types of witnesses. There's a witness, you call them up, say, remember what happened 20 years ago when that car hit your car? Yes. But then sometimes a person doesn't have a memory of what happened, but they have notes, they have a diary. So they look into their diary and they go, let me refresh my memory. I know vaguely something happened, but they look in the diary or they look in their newspaper clippings. Now I remember what happened. So the question is that witness a valid witness? Being their memory had to be jogged by notes, newspaper clippings, a diary. So there's a different opinions in the Talmud, okay? One opinion is only if you remember the testimony on your own is it valid in court. The second opinion says, no, no, no. If you read your diary or newspaper clippings and now it jogs your memory, that testimony is perfectly valid. Why is this law so important? Because when the Torah was given at Sinai, the commentaries explain that not only was the Torah given to everybody who stood at the mountain, men, women, children, but future generations, souls born in future lives, Jewish lives, were given the Torah that day. And even converts who would later convert also got the Torah that day. So how is this possible? How is that possible? So the Chassidus Kabbalah explains that all the souls were present and future souls. In other words, when someone converts, their soul goes through a transformation, a metamorphosis. We're at Sinai, albeit in a different form. So every single soul for all generations, all times stood at Sinai and got the Torah. Which now explains a little bit the law. I hope we could follow along. It's a little complicated perhaps. So sometimes someone asks you, remember something? I don't really remember it. No, I can't remember that story. But let's say you have written notes or you have newspaper clippings and someone says, remember what happened? Vaguely, let me go look. And you look into your note, and I remember what happened. I see the newspaper clipping. This is an example, this law about witnesses is an example of how the Torah is given to everyone for all generations. Because if every soul was there, and then future generation, like my generation, says, Freida, do you remember at Sinai? No, I wasn't at Sinai. My great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was at Sinai. But then you say, but I have notes. And you look into the Torah and you start reading the mitzvahs, you start reading the history, you start reading the Torah, and suddenly it clicks. Yes, now I remember what happened. But if you had never been there and not experienced the giving of the Torah, how are you supposed to be a witness to the Torah when you were never there? So by understanding this law from the Talmud, that you could be a witness provided your memory is jogged by notes or diary or newspaper clippings, explains that how the Torah, we are a witness to the Torah at Sinai because you were there. You might need to look inside the Torah for it to jog your soul's memory, but you were there. If you were never there, it doesn't matter if you read your diary. You were never there. It's like you're reading a novel about what happened. So every Jew is a witness to Torah. Every Jew is a witness to God. Why? Because we were there. And the Torah is our diary, our newspaper clipping, our notes that we took when we were there. And we use it to jog our memory. There's a little joke. It's not such a joke. Why should you study Kabbalah and Hasidism? Besides that, it gives you a depth, a dimension, a harmony. Because when Mashiach comes, and Mashiach, the leader of the Jewish people, will start teaching you the secrets of Torah, those who studied Kabbalah and Hasidus now will say, now I know what it meant. I didn't understand it then, but now I get it. And those that didn't will be like clueless because they never studied it. So my teacher, told me the story when I was in yeshiva college, he said, it's the aha. Those that studied before, what's going to be the difference between them who studied and them who didn't? The aha. Those who studied when will be taught the secrets of the Torah, when the world reaches its redemption, will say, aha, now I know what my teacher meant to tell me. Now I understand. And those that didn't won't have the aha. So it's all in the ha-ha. So all of us who stood at Sinai over 3,000 years ago and heard God give us the 10 commandments and teach us the Torah through Moshe, yeah, now I know. I was there. So when God says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. I gave you the Torah. You were there. All future generations were there. It's part of your DNA. You just have to look back at your notes and you'll remember what I taught you. That's how Torah is eternal. That's how every creation, every invention is in the Torah. How come we don't find it? Because you don't know what the inventions are. If you knew before that you're going to land on the moon, you would be able to find, they found, different codes and secrets of different discussion. But we don't know what to look for because we don't know what the inventions are going to be. But when the inventions come out, people have found it in the Torah through computer using codes, numerical values. It's a whole science. It's a whole study. So what do we get from today's class? From today's class, I think, and maybe you could share what you got, is that Torah was given when the Jews left Egypt. A people that suffered tremendous slavery, pain, persecution, hate, killings, murders, tyranny. They stood at the mountain and God said, Anochi, I can relate to who you are. Your experiences that are happening now, not experience going to happen in 100 years from now. And knowing your fallacies, your faults, your insecurities, your rebellious nature at times, I am giving you a Torah, a gift for all generations, for all times, forever. And if somebody says, I wasn't there, maybe you got to give them the Cliff Notes, the Torah, and say, look it over, see, maybe it resonates with you. Because Torah is really what keeps us human, what keeps us moral, ethical, what says to us in the same 10 commandments, it says, I am Lord your God, such an esoteric concept. You shall have no other gods, also esoteric. Then look across, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal. The same Torah that expects us to have a relationship with God is the same Torah that says not to kill. It's all connected. People kill because there's no accountability. I could do what I want. I was in the mood of killing. Society demanded that I kill. Then you haven't looked at tablet 1. I am the Lord your God. If you don't believe in God, of course, do whatever you want. God is the barometer and the accountability for all mankind. Otherwise, there is no barometer. There is no, today, thievery is permitted. Tomorrow, it may not be. This was the Nazis. There's a story in the Schindler's List, if you remember, there's a little girl hiding in a piano, baby grand piano. The Nazis come in, they realize she's hiding there, and they shoot her to death. And then one Nazi sits down at the piano and he starts playing magnificent music. And the other Nazi says to him, Bach? And he says, Nein, Mozart. And he says, Oi, sei schön, sei schön. He says, are you playing Bach? No, I'm playing Mozart. And he says, oh, it's magnificent. The same Nazi who took a gun and murdered a child now sits down to play music and lauds the composer? That's when you have no God. When you have no God, murder is less important than Mozart. Now, this is our Torah, and this is why it was given to us. That when you think society's barometer moved, and now this is permitted, and killing is okay because in the name of Allah, Akbar, whatever. No, I am the Lord your God. The same Lord that says, acknowledge me is the same God that says, you shall not murder. You cannot reconcile the two. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God. So we end today's class. Does anybody want to ask any questions? And remember the Rebetzin's yard site on Monday. Let's take her life to heart, what she taught, what she stood for. And even if we're a little bit of a Rebbetzin, it's good. Like there's a famous saying that every chassid is a shtickle Rebbe. Every chassidist is a shtickle Rebbetzin, which means every Jewish woman has a little bit of a Rebbetzin in her. We just have to tap into that. Good Shabbos.